world's changed. And you are right in the center of it.
I don't know what's ahead, but all bets are off.
Israel Adesanya defends his UFC middleweight title against Paulo Costa and does it in a way that can only be described as utterly, unequivocally dominant. The question for you, Brian, and I got to it a little bit yesterday, I have a few additional thoughts, but we'll start here. How big of a statement was this for Israel Adesanya?
Massive, and let me tell you why. To paraphrase the great Larry Merchant talking about Manny Pacquiao, we knew Adesanya was great. He's better than we thought he was, and I sincerely mean that, because here's the deal. Luke, there are different kinds of intimidations in combat sports, and we seem to only know it through the one lens of like a Mike Tyson or a prime Ronda Rousey, where you're so intimidated by their overwhelming power or ability to finish you so quickly that you go out of your own game plan and stop trying to be yourself, and then you still succumb to the violence coming at you. I thought Adesanya won this entirely through intimidation, but it wasn't for a massive knockout or a takedown in an armbar instantaneously. It was, I thought, Paulo Costa, maybe Adesanya was in his head. Maybe he watched video of Robert Whittaker getting taken care of in as efficient and violent nature that Adesanya did, because Paulo Costa wasn't himself in this fight, and I think that's his fault. I think he was in his own head, and the moment he decided, if I try to be who I am, which is rush this man, he's going to take care of me. That was when he lost the fight. And I don't know if Costa was trying to save his energy to explode late in the fight. I'm not really sure what his strategy was, and I think across the board that seems to be the sentiment. But either way, Adesanya was the alpha in this matchup from the moment that, they said go in that cage, and he picked him apart and dominated him. And Luke, we got to start having some real conversations. And I don't mean the knee-jerk, he's looking like one of the greatest of all time, which he is, by the way. But I don't mean that one. I mean how far is he away from entering the pound-for-pound king conversation right now? I think the dominant Khabib Nurmagomedov has that right now on lockdown, and I think the formerly dominant John Jones is right there still until we see him lose, really. I think Izzy's crashing this party now, Luke. Tell me if I'm wrong. And I know you drink the city kickboxing juice, so you're probably going to say I'm right. But seriously, I think I'm right.
You are probably right. It's actually something I've not thought too much about. So the guys in the top four, depending how you have 1 and 2, you're right, Khabib or Jones, and there's a debate to be had there. The rankings as they stand now, they've got Stipe at 3 and Izzy at 4. Boy, that's a great question. I mean, here's the deal. We were debating this last week, which was, what would a win over Costa do in terms of making Adesanya in the rankings for best middleweight champion of all time? Now, Anderson Silva has that by a country mile. If Adesanya wants that title, well, that's not even in the conversation at this moment. But for the rest of them, it kind of is, because Rich Franklin had wins over Evan Tanner and Nate Quarry. Nate Quarry only had wins from The Ultimate Fighter, Lodenson Cage, Shoney Carter, that type. So to me, those don't really stand the test of time. And then you have cases like Evan Tanner. I think that's just way too old. Murilo Bustamante, same thing. Luke Rockhold, not enough. Michael Bisping, not enough. The only one that's
Nate
even
Quarry,
in the
though,
orbit,
Luke, to be fair, Nate Quarry did have a big win when he joined you on that Spike TV MMA show. Hopefully he didn't get involved in Craig Carton's Ponzi scheme. That's all I have to say for that.
He certainly did not. He's a very upstanding guy, and he was a great combat sports fighter, but I just don't think that was the appropriate time for him to get a title shot, and I think he would tell you the same, actually. But the point being is, the only other real choice there is Weidman, and Weidman's hard to parse because he's got the 3 defenses, 2 of them, and then the 2 wins, I should say, over Silva. And to some people, the wins over Silva are evidence of achievement, and then to some, they're just sort of accidents, and there's never really going to be any settling of that debate. So I can accept a world where Weidman is that. But to me, 20 fights in, less than 3 years, 4 fights for a title, if you count the Kelvin Gastelum one, which you have to, undefeated. This is, I won't say an unprecedented run given what Anderson Silva has done, but if anyone looks like the heir to the throne of Anderson Silva, quite literally and then figuratively, it is Israel Adesanya, man. Look at what he is doing. Yes, the Romero win was not great. Not all of them can be. How many duds along the way did Anderson Silva have? Demi and Maya, and then the Cote fight ended up weirdly, but that fight was not going all that great. And on and on, Talis Laitis. Well, here's my thing. This fight was not merely a rebound from that. You're talking about, well, what was Costa's game plan? Dude, Costa's game plan was what Israel let it be. Israel froze him with those feints. He forced him to think. Everyone's like, why didn't he throw? Because Israel wouldn't let him. That's why, dude, when you have that kind of control this deep into your run over a presumed contender who was very deserving, at least of the opportunity, and you did something like that where it wasn't even a contest, I'm sorry, man, that's your second best middleweight champion ever. And I do think his case is better than Weidman's, even if I recognize there's a debate. So for pound, which was your original question, does he leap Stipe? I mean, Stipe is the greatest heavyweight in UFC history of all time. I don't know if we're there. But, man, you want to talk about if he's not already top 3, knocking on the door at a bare minimum, we are looking at something that this is reminiscent of Silva. I don't want to call him Silva 2.0, but in many ways he is. I think he's more technically sophisticated. I think he's doing things to this division and frustrating it in ways that Silva did, where BC, I'm sure you're seeing this. Things like, all he needs is someone who can grapple really well and will stick it to him and he'll lose, or somebody who's got X ability or Y ability. That's the same thing they did with Anderson Silva until he shut every mouth along the way, and they just recognized, you know what, he's too good.
Remember he dismantled Dan Henderson? Remember they thought that was going to be the one? I mean, go on and on down the line. Absolutely brilliant, and I think that you combine with how Dana bragged about the digital, commercial success of this card, and I don't know if we're going to get the actual pay-per-view numbers, but it seemed like this card mattered a whole hell of a lot. He's stepping into the spot now as one of their biggest stars. I mean, obviously Conor is still the guy, although we're going to talk about where he's going right now. But Izzy's also becoming that guy from a commercial standpoint to a large degree. If you're still a hater and you're still like, stop even sniffing things like he could become a greatest of all time, just look at what he's building, that Luke just said, and just look at even more the swagger and the ability to back it up. There's a special it factor with Izzy, and it's fun being on this ride right now. And, yeah, maybe there is a wrestler who can give him some damage, but I want to see that wrestler beat him. I want to see submission expert beat him. I want to see that brawler beat him. It's just not happening right now, Luke, because he is so extra sophisticated within the striking game that I don't know if it's going to matter until he gets a little bit older.
Hey, remember after the Anderson Silva fight, you told me you weren't so sure, and I was like, "You're crazy," and now you're realizing how right I was. Can you acknowledge that?
You're going to mix that. I want to make that point cream and clear. I'm sorry, because you were taking your love for Adi back then and rubbing it on yourself like it was the cream and clear there, Gary Sheffield. What I was saying at that point was Anderson Silva, at however old he was, poured out the jug that night and did succeed in disarming and somewhat humanizing Adesanya. And I know we can go, well, maybe he was respecting him. No, Adesanya didn't want to risk having this old champion, ruin what he was building, and he played it a little bit safe. He did. He was sophisticated and great, but he played it safe, and it allowed Anderson to save face and look really good in defeat that night. But, like you said, not every fight's going to be a banger or a clean knockout. That was a tough Anderson Silva that night. I'm not going to hear anything else from anyone else, but I know what The Rock's cooking on Adesanya from the beginning.
That was Adesanya.
Although you've got the city kickboxing tattoo across your chest, I have seen you shirtless. I know you're day one-ish on these guys, but come on, I could hear Jimmy, bro.
In all seriousness, and it's hard to compare somebody who's got such a diametrically opposed style like a Khabib, but I'm asking a question where I think he is certainly in the conversation. Who is a smarter fighter? The reason why the Romero fight was bad, there was a lot of factors, but one is Adesanya is not an idiot about who is in front of him. He pays deference to their skills. Same with Anderson Silva. What you saw on Saturday, and the reason why there was such a wide gap, is that for all of the physical prowess that Bohoshinia possesses, and by the way, he's going to get some wins again. He's going to stack some W's. He's by no means done. But the reason why there was such a gap is because in terms of the sophistication, the cerebral approach to the game, thinking through the problems, understanding tactics, understanding strategy, understanding the layers of complexity. Dude, this was big bank, take little bank, 84s and candy paint. There was no comparison between the two. It was master and teacher, master and student. I'm botching all of these analogies. I'm just trying to point out, if you see Adesanya in these scenarios where they're not quite exciting, he's holding back a little bit, it tells you he recognizes there's a threat in front of him. And he does that a little bit in this fight to start, but once he got going, I mean, it was over. So what this tells you is you're looking at a guy who he can be exciting when he can make that skill differential a function of intelligence. And more to the point, when there is one, holy smokes, is he deadly. Whoa.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, and by the way, last thing on this, BC, I'm looking at the rankings. Let me go through this here very quickly. Now, no one's not all these guys are in line, but here's who's left who he hasn't fought, and there's rematches in order, I get. But in terms of who he hasn't fought, Cannonier, Hermanson, Till, let's see, Weidman, Hall, Shabazian, Akhmedov, beat Vittori, and then Heinisch.
He's gonna see Vittori
Anyone on that list stand out to you as an obvious threat? Because they don't to me.
Not yet, and because they haven't had the run or the big time wins that can enter them there. But obviously, anyone on that list can rip off 2 in a row and separate himself from the rest of that pack. And for a night, we could feel like they're a legitimate test. But I do not believe the respect we had for Borrachinha coming in the thought process of, you said it to me before that fight started. You're like, I don't know, man. I'm feeling Costa might do something here. He might surprise us. That's because of what he had built. Somebody else could get there. Cannonier's going to be a tough out, but no, you're not going to be able to favor anybody now until he decides to move up in weight, and who knows if he will. He seems to be very bold in that regard. I just wanted to make one separation here. You mentioned, he could be right there with Stipe in the pound for pound. I know people have different understandings of what pound for pound means to them, and I get in a lot of fights with the boxing journalists on this because I think a lot of people get it wrong. What you have accomplished gets you into the discussion, but I think ultimately it's the eye test that separates it. So what that means is why I would put Adesanya ahead of Stipe right now. Not only does he have a great resume, Adesanya, that he's already built, but the whole idea of they'll never actually fight unless one moves up and does something crazy, so you have to put them in the same mythical weight class in your mind. They bring with them the same advantages against their own weight class that they have. So if you're putting Izzy in this mythical thing against Stipe, yes, Stipe's going to have the power. He's going to have the chin. He's going to have all that toughness. But I think Adesanya picks him apart style for style. So when it's that close and so you have to separate it, I think that's why we have this pound for pound debate.
Are you in?
This is our time. The world's changed, and you are right in the center of it.
I don't know what's ahead, but all bets are off.